The night sky above the neutral planet of Varus was full of stars, but none of them gave comfort. Ships from dozens of alien species floated silently in orbit, each one holding its own warriors, politicians, and spies. They had gathered for something that was supposed to be historic, a peace accord that would finally end centuries of scattered wars across the galaxy. The message was clear: unity or destruction. But everyone in the Grand Hall knew the truth. No one trusted anyone. Not the reptilian Zarn, not the insectoid Hreth, not the silicon-skinned Zalari. Even the humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, stood alert with sharp eyes. Captain Marcus Hale of the United Earth Defense Fleet scanned the room with calm precision. His uniform was simple compared to the glowing robes and ceremonial armor of other species, but his presence felt heavier than any decoration. He did not trust this meeting. He could feel it in his bones. Something was wrong. At the center of the hall, a silver platform rose. The Galactic Council's High Speaker, a tall being of light, raised its arms. "We are here to end war," the being declared. Its voice was soft, like wind through glass. "Let peace begin." Whispers spread through the delegates, but Marcus kept his eyes moving. Every human soldier in the chamber had the same orders: watch, listen, and be ready. Humans were young in the galactic community, barely a century since first contact, but their reputation had spread fast. Other species considered them reckless, unpredictable, and too quick to fight. And maybe, Marcus thought, that was true. But it was also the reason humanity was still alive. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber dimmed. A low vibration echoed through the hall, felt more in the bones than heard with ears. Marcus frowned. "That's not part of the ceremony," he muttered. His hand brushed the weapon hidden beneath his coat. Around him, other humans shifted, ready. The High Speaker froze, its glowing form flickering. A second later, a blast shook the hall. Walls of energy slammed down around the chamber, trapping everyone inside. Panic erupted. Delegates screamed in their alien tongues, guards raised weapons, and chaos swallowed the room. Marcus did not move with panic. He had seen traps before. This was one. The so-called peace accord was nothing more than bait. Through the rising smoke, figures appeared. Soldiers in dark armor, their helmets sealed and glowing with red light, marched into the chamber. They moved with perfect coordination, weapons raised, their target clear, the delegates. This was not about peace. It was about extermination. "Down!" Marcus shouted, pushing a human aide behind cover. His voice cut through the chaos. Around him, human soldiers drew their weapons, fast and smooth. The armored invaders opened fire. Blue energy bolts tore across the chamber, cutting down those too slow to hide. Alien leaders fell in moments, their guards struggling to respond. But the humans did not hesitate. They answered fire with fire, their bullets punching through the enemy's armor. The other species looked on in shock. They had always believed humans were undisciplined brawlers, creatures of chaos. Yet here, in the heart of a deadly ambush, the humans fought like they had trained for this exact moment. And the truth was, they had. Marcus ducked as a bolt seared past his head. He aimed, fired twice, and an armored attacker dropped. His voice stayed calm as he spoke into his comm: "Unit Bravo, secure the left flank. Charlie, with me. Delta, cover the speaker. Move." The humans moved as one. Clear, precise, ruthless. They had suspected this so-called peace was too convenient. History had taught them a simple lesson: when everyone talks peace, someone is preparing war. And humanity had not come unprepared. One of the armored soldiers charged forward, blade of pure energy in hand. Marcus met him head-on, catching the swing on a reinforced shield plate. With a swift motion, he drove his weapon into the enemy's chest and shoved the body aside. His eyes scanned for the next threat, calm and unshaken. Around him, other humans fought with the same cold focus. They did not scream, did not panic. Every move was meant to kill, to protect, to survive. Their reputation as dangerous fighters was not a rumor, it was truth. The High Speaker's voice trembled, flickering as if its very form was breaking. They want to destroy the council, to end all peace. Marcus gave a short, grim nod. Then we'll make sure peace survives. But first, we'll make them bleed. The invaders had expected fear. Instead, they found resistance. Instead of helpless victims, they had walked into the teeth of a predator. The humans, underestimated as always, were turning the trap inside out. The battle inside the chamber was only the beginning. Outside, more ships were arriving, more weapons primed, more betrayals unfolding. And Marcus knew this was no accident. The peace accord had been a setup. But what the enemy had forgotten was simple. Humanity never walked blindly into a trap. They walked in with their weapons loaded. And this time, they were ready for war. Smoke hung thick in the chamber as the fighting raged on. Sparks showered from shattered light panels, and the floor was littered with the bodies of both alien delegates and armored invaders. What had been promised as a gathering of peace was now a battlefield drenched in fear. Marcus Hale pressed his back against a pillar, reloading his weapon with practiced ease. His mind was cold, focused. He could hear his soldiers' voices over the comms, short, clipped reports, each one confirming enemy kills, each one describing how they were holding the line. But he also knew they were outnumbered. The enemy had planned this for months, maybe years. The humans had prepared for treachery, but preparation could only carry them so far. Captain, one of his lieutenants, Sergeant Alvarez, called out from cover. They're herding the delegates, pushing them toward the center. Marcus risked a glance. She was right. The armored soldiers were not simply trying to kill everyone. They were forcing the survivors together, surrounding them like wolves circling prey. The aliens were terrified, shoving against each other, their fear making them useless. Marcus gritted his teeth. The enemy wanted a massacre, something that would destroy all trust between species and shatter the idea of a galactic alliance forever. And if humanity was blamed for failing to stop it, the war that followed would burn across the stars. Not today, Marcus muttered. He signaled his troops. Form up. Push them back from the center. Protect the delegates. Move. The humans surged forward. Their boots pounded against the metallic floor, their fire precise, cutting into the enemy's formation. The armored soldiers were strong, but they were rigid, trained to follow orders without question. Humans fought differently. Fast, flexible, unpredictable. They rolled, dodged, attacked from odd angles. Their bullets punched through weak points, their knives slid under armor plates. The aliens watched in disbelief. The insectoid Hreth, with their chittering mandibles, froze in shock as they saw a human private wrestle a towering invader to the ground and finish him with a blade to the throat. The crystalline Zalari stared in silence as another human calmly dragged two wounded diplomats behind cover while firing with one hand. For the first time, the delegates saw humanity not as reckless savages but as something far more dangerous. Professionals who had lived with war so long it was part of their blood. A deafening roar cut through the chaos. The massive doors of the chamber burst open, and more armored soldiers poured in, their weapons glowing hotter, deadlier. At their front marched a commander, his armor darker than the rest, a crimson mark blazing across his chest. His voice echoed through a built-in speaker, sharp and cold. None leave alive. The invaders unleashed a barrage of fire. The chamber shook as bolts of plasma tore through walls and pillars. Humans dove for cover, returning fire with brutal precision. Marcus knew they could not hold this ground for long. Then, amid the storm, the high speaker's trembling light flared brighter. There is an exit, it whispered, its form flickering. Beneath the chamber, an emergency path. Marcus glanced at the being. Its glow was weak, unstable, but its words gave him a thread of hope. Show us, he ordered. The high speaker extended a wavering hand. A section of the floor hissed and shifted, revealing a hidden passage. Darkness yawned below, a tunnel leading deep into the planet. Marcus turned to his troops. Hold them off. Buy the delegates time to get through. Alvarez shouted back. And you. I'll be the last out, Marcus said without hesitation. The soldiers nodded. No one argued. They trusted him. One by one, the terrified alien delegates were pushed toward the opening. Humans shielded them, blocking fire with their own bodies if needed. Every second bought with blood. The enemy commander saw what was happening and roared, charging forward with his warriors. His massive blade carved through air, slamming against Marcus's shield with bone-shaking force. Sparks exploded as the two clashed, strength against will. You think your kind can change the galaxy? The commander sneered through his speaker. You are nothing but vermin playing at war. Marcus shoved back, his eyes cold. Funny. Vermin usually survive. He slammed a pistol against the commander's helmet and fired point-blank. The armor cracked, sparks bursting. The enemy staggered but did not fall. Rage fueled him, his strikes growing heavier. Meanwhile, the humans fought like demons, their lines bending but never breaking. Alvarez was everywhere at once, pulling soldiers into cover, returning fire, refusing to give ground. The chamber became a furnace of fire and death, but still the humans held. Finally, the last of the delegates disappeared into the tunnel. Marcus's comm crackled, Alvarez's voice, urgent. Captain, we've got to go. Marcus shoved the enemy commander back with all his strength, then tossed a small device onto the floor. A timed charge. Fall back, he barked, sprinting toward the tunnel. The humans moved fast, diving through the opening just as the charge detonated. Fire ripped through the chamber, collapsing part of the ceiling and burying the enemy commander in rubble. The tunnel sealed behind them with a heavy clang. Darkness swallowed the survivors, broken only by the flicker of emergency lights. The air was hot, thick with dust and fear. The delegates were shaking, whispering in disbelief. They had been seconds from death, and only the humans had saved them. Marcus stood tall despite his exhaustion. He looked at them, his voice steady. You wanted peace. Fine. But peace never comes free. Remember what you saw today. Remember who stood when everyone else fell. The aliens met his gaze. For the first time, they did not see humans as reckless newcomers. They saw them as the one species willing to fight when no one else could. But Marcus knew the war was only beginning. The ambush was not random. Someone powerful had planned it, someone who wanted to tear the galaxy apart. And now, humanity was standing right in their way. The tunnel stretched endlessly beneath the surface of Varus, dim emergency lights flickering along its metallic walls. Every step echoed, every sound magnified in the silence. The delegates stumbled, whispering in fear, their voices carrying strange clicks, hisses, and tones. The humans moved differently, silent, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. Captain Marcus Hale led the group at a steady pace. His armor was scorched, his shield dented, but his mind remained sharp. He kept thinking about the enemy commander's words, none leave alive. That was not a simple threat, it was a mission. Whoever had planned this ambush would not stop until every witness was dead. Behind him, Sergeant Alvarez whispered. Captain, motion sensors are picking up movement. We're not alone down here. Marcus gave a short nod. Expected. Double the rear guard. Two humans fell back, rifles up, covering the twisting path behind them. The sound of claws scraping metal echoed faintly through the tunnel. Something was following. One of the delegates, a tall Zalari with a crystalline body, stumbled closer to Marcus. Its voice vibrated like breaking glass. Why do you risk yourselves for us? Most species would leave us to die. Marcus did not look at it. His eyes stayed forward. Because if we don't, then peace dies here. And if peace dies, war will consume everything, including Earth. The Zalari was silent, its glowing eyes reflecting something close to respect. Suddenly, the tunnel shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling as a section of wall tore open. Enemy soldiers burst through, their glowing red helmets filling the passage with light. They had tracked them down faster than Marcus had hoped. Contact front. Alvarez shouted. The humans reacted instantly. They pulled the delegates behind cover and formed a firing line. Bullets and plasma bolts filled the tunnel, deafening in the tight space. The enemy's armor deflected some of the shots, but human rifles struck with brutal force, tearing through at close range. The aliens cowered, their fear growing. But then they saw something strange. The humans were calm, even here, in a metal coffin of death. One soldier slid across the floor, firing upward into an enemy's chest. Another reloaded with one hand while pulling a wounded diplomat to safety with the other. Marcus moved like a machine, his weapon barking in short, precise bursts. Every shot found a target. When his clip ran dry, he drew his combat knife and charged, cutting down an enemy who had forced too close. His soldiers matched his ferocity. The delegates had never seen war like this. Their own guards, now dead, had fought with ceremony, with honor codes and ritual movements. The humans fought like survivors, messy, brutal, efficient. The tunnel filled with smoke and screams. Within minutes, the invaders lay dead, their glowing helmets dark. The humans, bloodied but alive, pushed forward without hesitation. But Marcus's face was grim. If the enemy had found them this quickly, it meant one thing: the tunnels were compromised. The invaders knew every exit. Alvarez walked beside him, her rifle still smoking. "Captain, they're not just trying to kill us. They're trying to bury us down here." Marcus nodded. "Which means the exits will be guarded hard." They reached a junction where the tunnel split into 3 directions. The high speaker, its glowing form weak and trembling, hovered closer. "This path leads to the old evacuation hangars, but the enemy may already be there." Marcus studied the map on his wrist display. "It's our only chance. We need a ship." One of the smaller delegates, a frail Hreth with insect-like wings, hissed nervously. "We cannot fight our way through a hangar full of enemies. It is impossible." Marcus finally turned, his gaze hard. "For you. Not for us." The words cut through the fear. The delegates fell silent, unsure if they were comforted or terrified. The group pushed on, deeper into the tunnels. But the enemy was relentless. Twice more they were ambushed, and twice more the humans tore through the attackers. Their supplies were running low, their bodies bruised, but their spirits unbroken. Finally, after what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Old hangars stretched before them, massive doors sealed shut, dust covering in used ships. The humans spread out, securing corners, scanning for threats. But Marcus felt it before he saw it. The silence was wrong. "Eyes up," he ordered. The words had barely left his mouth when the hangar lights exploded to life. Dozens of armored soldiers dropped from hidden ledges above, surrounding the chamber. At the front stood the enemy commander, alive despite the earlier blast, his armor scorched but his blade gleaming. His voice thundered through the hangar. "You should have stayed in the dark, human. Now you die in the light." The delegates collapsed into despair. They had no weapons, no courage left. But the humans. They tightened their grips, adjusted their stances, and readied themselves. Marcus stepped forward, his voice like iron. "We don't die easy." And with that, the hangar erupted into chaos once more. The hangar shook with the thunder of weapons fire. Red light from enemy visors cut through the smoke as armored soldiers closed in from all sides. The delegates screamed and scrambled for cover, but the humans did not flinch. They had been in worse places. They knew how to fight when trapped. "Form a circle," Marcus Hale barked. His voice was sharp, commanding. Instantly, his soldiers pulled the delegates into the center and formed a tight perimeter around them. Rifles snapped up, safeties clicked off, and the first wave of enemy soldiers charged. The hangar exploded into violence. Gunfire echoed like rolling thunder. Humans fired in bursts, each shot precise, each strike tearing holes into armored suits. But the enemy was endless. For every soldier that fell, 2 more took his place. The floor became slick with ash and blood. Sergeant Alvarez shouted over the noise. "Captain, we're running low on ammo." Marcus knew it. Every human carried only what they could bring into the council chamber. The fight had drained their supplies, and now they were cornered against a wall of steel. If they stayed here, they would be overrun. His eyes swept the hangar, fast, calculating. Then he saw it, an old transport ship, dusty and forgotten, but large enough to carry them all. Its hull was scarred, but its engine ports looked intact. There. Marcus pointed. We push to that transport. Cover fire. The humans shifted, pouring bullets into the enemy to open a path. Delegates stumbled forward, shoved and pulled by human hands. Some resisted in terror, but the soldiers dragged them along. There was no time for weakness. The enemy commander, his crimson-marked armor glowing in the haze, raised his blade and pointed toward Marcus. His voice rang across the hangar. The human dies first. He charged, smashing aside his own soldiers in his rush to reach Marcus. The ground shook beneath his heavy steps. Marcus didn't back down. He stepped forward, shield raised, meeting the commander head-on. The two clashed in a storm of sparks and steel, each strike echoing like thunderclaps. The commander swung with brutal strength, his blade slicing through the air in wide arcs. Marcus blocked, deflected, and countered, each movement sharp and practiced. He felt the weight of every blow rattling through his arm, but he refused to break. Around them, the battle raged. Humans covered each other with ruthless coordination. When one reloaded, another stepped in front to fire. When one fell, two more closed ranks. The delegates, still trembling, could only stare in awe. Sergeant Alvarez led a squad toward the transport, forcing open its hatch with brute strength. "Captain, doors open," she yelled. Marcus gritted his teeth, shoving the enemy commander back for just a moment. "Get them inside." The delegates rushed into the transport, guided by human hands. Some wept, some stumbled, but all made it through the hatch. The commander's blade slashed across Marcus's shield, sparks spraying. The force drove him back, boots sliding against the metal floor. The enemy laughed, deep and cruel. "You fight like a beast, but you are only flesh. You will break." Marcus's breathing was heavy, his arms trembling with effort, but his eyes were steady. "Maybe, but not before you." He feinted left, then drove forward, slamming the edge of his shield into the commander's chest. The enemy staggered, surprised. Marcus used the moment to strike, his knife flashing as he buried it into a weak joint at the armor's neck. Sparks erupted, and the commander roared in rage. But he did not fall. He swung his blade in a wide arc, forcing Marcus to leap back. Blood dripped from Marcus's side where the strike had grazed him, but still he stood. "Captain!" Alvarez shouted from the transport hatch. "We're ready to lift off. You need to move." Marcus locked eyes with the commander. They both knew the fight wasn't finished. But survival came first. "Next time," Marcus said coldly. He threw a flash grenade at the commander's feet and sprinted for the ship. The blinding light filled the hangar, stunning the enemy long enough for Marcus to dive inside. "Go!" he ordered. Engines roared. The old transport shuddered, dust and smoke swirling as it lifted off the ground. Enemy fire hammered against its hull, but the ship powered upward, rising through the hangar's launch tunnel. The sealed doors groaned, then blasted open under the strain of the engines. The transport shot into the night sky above Varus. Stars stretched across the darkness, but the relief was short-lived. Ahead of them, more enemy ships rose from the planet's surface, their weapons glowing. The trap was not finished, the noose was tightening. Inside the transport, the delegates collapsed, some sobbing, some silent in shock. The humans moved quickly, sealing wounds, checking weapons, preparing for another fight. Marcus leaned against the wall, blood staining his uniform, but his voice was calm. "They want to chase us? Fine. Let them. Now we take the fight to them." The delegates turned to him, wide-eyed. For the first time in their lives, they saw something terrifying and comforting in the same breath. Humans did not just survive traps. They escaped with fire in their eyes, ready to strike back. And in that moment, the galaxy began to change. The stolen transport screamed through the skies of Varys, its old engines straining as they pushed into orbit. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and fear. Delegates huddled together, trembling, while the humans moved like clockwork, checking systems, sealing wounds, and preparing for what came next. Sergeant Alvarez sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls. "Engines are holding, Captain," she reported. "But they weren't built for a chase. If they push us, we'll burn out." Marcus Hale stood behind her, his side bandaged, his eyes locked on the stars ahead. He didn't need sensors to know they were being hunted. He could feel it in the silence between the stars. And then it appeared. Enemy ships rose from the dark, sleek and angular, their hulls glowing with crimson lights. They fanned out like predators circling prey, their weapons already locking onto the transport. The delegates cried out, voices high with despair. "We cannot fight them. We have no weapons." Marcus's voice cut through their panic, cold and sharp. "Then we run. And if running doesn't work, we fight with whatever we have." Alvarez's jaw tightened. "They'll catch us before we clear orbit." Marcus turned to his soldiers. "Options." Private Chen slammed a hand against the side panel. "The ship's got old cargo launchers. No real weapons, but I might be able to rig them." "Do it," Marcus said. The transport shuddered as enemy fire streaked past, grazing its shields. Sparks showered across the cockpit. Alvarez gritted her teeth, forcing the ship into a hard dive. The delegates screamed, tumbling against each other. But the humans. They barely moved, their hands gripping rails, their focus unbroken. Marcus leaned closer to Alvarez. "Take us into the debris field." Her eyes flicked to him. "That's suicide. Better than waiting for them to cut us apart." She didn't argue. With a sharp pull, she veered the ship into the shadow of Varys's broken moon. The view ahead filled with jagged rocks, shattered remains of an ancient battle. Asteroids spun slowly, silent tombstones of forgotten wars. The enemy ships followed without hesitation. Inside the transport, Chin worked furiously. He ripped wires from panels, rerouted power, and slammed a metal casing shut. "Cargo launchers online," he called. "Don't ask what happens if they jam." "Good enough," Marcus said. The first enemy ship swooped in, its weapons glowing. "Fire," Marcus ordered. A cluster of heavy cargo crates blasted from the launcher, tumbling through space. At first, the delegates laughed nervously. "Boxes? That is your weapon." Then the crates slammed into the enemy ship at high speed, smashing through its shields and tearing into its hull. The ship spun out of control, crashing into an asteroid before exploding into a ball of fire. The delegates went silent, their eyes wide. The humans did not cheer, did not gloat. They simply reloaded the launcher. More enemy ships closed in. Plasma bolts raked the transport side, rocking it violently. Alarms wailed. Alvarez's hands were steady, weaving the old ship through spinning debris, using asteroids as cover. "Another volley," Marcus commanded. Chin launched more crates, this time rigged with fuel cells. The improvised bombs detonated among the enemy, sending shards of burning metal across space. 2 more ships went down, but more kept coming. "They won't stop," Alvarez warned. "They'll chase us until we're dead." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Unless we show them why that's a mistake." He turned to the high speaker, its glowing form flickering weakly. "You knew about this setup, didn't you?" The being's light dimmed further. "I suspected. There are factions within the council who hate peace. They believe war will keep them strong. I did not think they would act so boldly." Marcus's jaw clenched. So it was true. This wasn't just an ambush, it was a conspiracy at the highest level. Someone powerful had planned to slaughter the council, blame another species, and ignite a war that would consume the galaxy. And humanity had just landed in the middle of it. The transport rocked again as enemy fire clipped its engines. Warnings blared. Systems failed one by one. Engines won't hold much longer. Alvarez shouted. Marcus scanned the field. His eyes locked on a massive derelict, a broken warship drifting among the asteroids, its hull scarred but still intact. There. Take us into that wreck. Alvarez hesitated. If it collapses, then we die faster, Marcus said. Move. The transport dove, engines screaming as it slipped into the wreck's shadow. Enemy ships circled outside, scanning, waiting. For the moment, they were hidden. Inside the dark warship, the transport settled against the broken hull. The engines powered down, silence falling heavy. The delegates whispered in fear. We are trapped. They will find us. Marcus stood tall, his face hard, his voice calm. Good. Let them come. He looked at his soldiers, their weapons low on ammo, their armor scorched, but their eyes burning. They think we're prey, he said. They think humans run. But this time, we make the hunters bleed. The humans nodded as one. In the silence of the dead warship, their resolve was iron. Because humanity had survived 1,000 traps before. And every time, they had turned traps into graves, for their enemies. The derelict warship was silent, its corridors filled with dust and shadows. Long-dead consoles flickered weakly, sparks dripping like dying stars. The humans moved carefully, flashlights sweeping across broken walls. Behind them, the delegates stumbled, their fear louder than their steps. Marcus Hale raised a hand, signaling a stop. His voice was low but sharp. Stay quiet. They'll come looking. Everyone froze. The only sound was the groan of ancient metal shifting in the cold void. But Marcus's instincts told him what was coming. The enemy would not leave them hidden for long. Sergeant Alvarez whispered. Captain, ammo's almost dry. Half the squad's down to knives and sidearms. Marcus gave a short nod. Then we fight with steel and hands if we have to. We don't die in this tomb. The high speaker floated weakly behind them, its glow barely holding. Why risk yourselves? You could escape and leave us. Marcus turned his head slightly, his eyes cold. Because if you die, peace dies. And we're not letting them win. Before the speaker could respond, the ship trembled. Heavy boots echoed in the distance, metal on metal, growing louder. The enemy had boarded. The humans moved instantly, falling into defensive positions. They chose a narrow corridor, walls tight enough to funnel attackers. Marcus crouched at the front, shield braced, rifle ready. Alvarez positioned the rear guard, her pistol steady despite the dim light. The first red glow appeared, enemy visors cutting through the dark. Then came the roar of boots as armored soldiers surged forward. Hold! Marcus commanded. The corridor exploded into chaos. Humans fired short, precise bursts, every shot slamming into exposed joints. Knives flashed when ammo ran dry, blades sliding under armor. The air filled with smoke, blood, and the hiss of sparking circuits. One human went down, tackled by 2 soldiers. He drew his last grenade, pulled the pin, and grinned through blood. For Earth. The blast tore through the corridor, killing him and the enemy both. The delegates gasped, horrified. But the humans did not falter. Sacrifice was part of survival. The enemy pressed harder. Their commander had not come yet, but his soldiers moved with relentless force. Still, the humans refused to break. They fought like wolves with their backs to the wall, feral, fast, merciless. At last, silence fell. The corridor was filled with broken bodies, smoke curling from ruined armor. The humans stood, bloodied but alive. Then the ground shook. Heavy footsteps echoed again, slower this time, heavier. The enemy commander had arrived. He stepped into view, his crimson-marked armor dented but repaired, his blade glowing brighter than before. His voice was deep, echoing through the derelict halls. Still alive, human? Impressive. But this tomb will be your grave. Marcus stepped forward, shield raised, knife in hand. His rifle was empty, but his eyes burned. "You've been trying to kill us since the council chamber. Why? Who sent you?" The commander's laugh was cold. "You still don't see? Peace is weakness. War is strength. And when the galaxy burns, my masters will rule what's left." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Masters? So you're just a pawn." The commander roared, swinging his blade down. Marcus blocked with his shield, sparks showering the corridor. The impact drove him back, but he did not fall. He countered with a strike to the neck joint, but the armor held. The two clashed in brutal rhythm, every strike echoing through the derelict halls. Around them, humans dragged delegates farther back, forming another line. They would hold the ship while Marcus fought. Alvarez shouted over the comms. "Captain, more hostiles inbound. Whole squads. We can't hold forever." Marcus gritted his teeth as the commander's blade carved another gouge into his shield. "Then we don't hold," he growled. "We kill." With a sudden surge, he drove forward, slamming the commander against a bulkhead. His knife stabbed again and again, searching for weak points. Sparks flew as he found one, cutting deep into the armor. The commander roared, grabbing Marcus by the throat and lifting him. "Your species will be ash," the commander snarled. Marcus spat blood into his helmet. "Then we'll be the last ash you choke on." Before the commander could strike, Alvarez fired from the rear. Her last rocket, a scavenged launcher from the derelict's armory, streaked down the corridor. The explosion tore through the wall, engulfing the commander in fire. The blast ripped him off his feet, throwing him into the dark. The ship shook violently, bulkheads collapsing. "Captain, we've got to move," Alvarez shouted. Marcus coughed, his throat burning, but he forced his body to move. "All units, fall back. Now." The humans pulled the delegates through collapsing halls, smoke and fire chasing them. They burst into a vast chamber, the derelict's command bridge. Dead consoles glowed faintly, but one system still hummed with power. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Alvarez, can you get this thing online?" She ran to the controls, hands flying. "Maybe. It's old, but the weapons grid, it's still functional." The delegates gasped. "You mean to fight them with a dead ship? That is madness." Marcus's lips curled into the faintest smile. "No. That's humanity." Outside the broken hull, enemy ships closed in, their red lights glowing like predators circling a wounded animal. Inside, the humans worked fast, bringing the warship's ancient cannons to life. And as the first enemy cruiser locked weapons, Marcus gave the order. "Let's remind them why humans don't die easy." The derelict warship came alive with a groan that shook the bones of everyone inside. Dust rained from the ceiling as ancient engines rumbled for the first time in centuries. Sparks lit the command bridge, and broken screens flickered with faded colors. Alvarez wiped sweat from her brow as her hands flew across the cracked console. "Systems online. Weapons grid active, but shields are weak. We only get one good strike." Marcus Hale stood tall, his body bruised, blood running down his neck, but his voice was steady. "One strike is all we need." Through the fractured viewports, enemy cruisers moved into position, their crimson lights glowing like predators ready to kill. They had numbers, they had power, but they didn't have what the humans had. The delegates stood huddled in the corner, watching with wide eyes. Some whispered prayers, others shook in silence. The high speaker floated weakly, its glow fading. "Human, if you fail, all is lost." Marcus turned his head slightly, his voice cold but calm. "Then we don't fail." Outside, the enemy hailed them, the voice of the commander booming through every channel, scarred but still alive. "You think you've won? That wreck you hide in will be your coffin. Surrender, and I will grant your kind a quick death." Marcus leaned over the console, his eyes burning with fire. "Funny. That's exactly what I was about to say to you." The enemy ships powered their weapons, red beams charging like suns about to burst. The humans braced for impact. But before the enemy fired, Marcus gave the order. Alvarez, light them up. The derelict shuddered as its cannons came alive. Beams of blinding light cut through the void, striking the nearest cruiser. Its armor split like paper, explosions ripping across its hull. The ship twisted, broke apart, and vanished in fire. The bridge shook as enemy fire rained down, tearing chunks from the derelict. Sparks burst, smoke filled the air, and consoles cracked under the assault. Still, Alvarez held her ground, firing shot after shot. Each beam of ancient power slammed into enemy ships, tearing holes through their mighty fleets. The delegates gasped in disbelief. They are winning. But Marcus knew better. For every enemy ship that fell, 2 more closed in. The derelict was dying, its metal screaming, its power fading fast. "Captain!" Alvarez shouted. "Weapons overheating. 1 more volley, and this ship tears itself apart." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He looked out at the enemy fleet, at the crimson glow surrounding them. Then he looked back at his people, tired, bleeding, but unbroken. "Then we make the last shot count," he said. The enemy commander's ship moved to the front, its blade-shaped hull glowing with energy. His voice thundered across the comms. "This ends now." Marcus stared at the massive vessel, the core of their fleet, the heart of the conspiracy. If that ship fell, the rest would break. He turned to Alvarez. "Target their flagship." Alvarez's fingers flew, locking the final shot. "If we do this, Captain, we don't walk away." Marcus's voice was low but unshaken. "Humanity doesn't walk away. Humanity fights." "Fire!" The derelict roared, every cannon discharging at once. The beams converged into one blinding lance of light that tore through the void, cutting straight into the enemy flagship. The crimson ship screamed as explosions ripped through its core, fire tearing its body apart. For a heartbeat, the void was brighter than a sun. Then silence. The flagship was gone. The enemy fleet hesitated. Their commander's voice was silent, their chain of command broken. Some ships fled instantly, vanishing into the stars. Others fired wildly, desperate but unfocused. Marcus stood straight despite his wounds, his voice carrying across the bridge. "They're not gods. They bleed. And when they bleed, they run." The humans pressed the attack, using the derelict's last strength. Ship after ship fell, until the remaining enemies scattered into the dark, leaving only wreckage and silence. Inside the bridge, alarms blared. The derelict's core was failing, energy spiking out of control. Alvarez shouted, "We need to evacuate. This ship's going to blow." Marcus nodded. "Get the delegates to the pods. Move." The humans dragged the survivors through collapsing halls, flames and smoke chasing them. One by one, pods launched into the void, carrying the delegates to safety. Marcus was the last to board. He looked back at the dying warship, its once silent halls now roaring with fire. He whispered under his breath, "Rest now. You served one last time." The pod launched just as the derelict exploded, a sun blooming in the void. The shockwave lit the stars, and the enemy's defeat was written across the galaxy. Later, when the survivors gathered on a safe world, the delegates stood before the humans. Their voices trembled with awe. "You saved us. You saved peace. But why risk everything, when no one would have blamed you for running?" Marcus Hale, his armor scarred, his eyes steady, answered with the calm of a soldier who had seen too much. "Because that's what humans do. We don't run. We don't kneel. We fight. And if the galaxy wants peace, then they'll remember this night. Not because peace was signed, but because humanity bled for it." The chamber fell silent. Even the high speaker bowed its glowing head. For the first time, they understood. Humans were not just another species. They were the knife in the dark, the shield in the storm, the fire that refused to die. And somewhere, in the deep void, enemies watched. They had seen what humans could do. They had seen that the peace accord was only the beginning. the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.